what are some of the red flags, classical red flags in your ODD that almost always lead to recommend against investing in a fund? Can you describe an exceptional case where you overrode your own red flag criteria and still proceeded with an investment?
Certainly have seen a lot of red flags, but when we do come across red flags, they're not automatic deal showstoppers. We view them as opportunities for the manager to improve, and we look to see how they are addressing these inefficiencies. Typically, it has to be a combination of a lot of yellow flags that would lead to an ultimate risk rating of a high risk or a deficient manager. I'd say some common red flags would be unfamiliar service providers, a lack of a fund administrator for hedge funds, and even private equity and venture capital funds. We're looking at controls for valuation. Aside from a manager having a valuation policy, we're looking for them to have a committee. So that's an example of a best practice item that we would recommend to a manager. But there are showstoppers where there is an SEC enforcement action or disciplinary history against the firm or its principals. And what we're looking for is transparency from the manager. If they can be forthcoming about those issues, then on the flip side, if they're downplaying those issues or not being transparent, then that would be a red flag. Some examples would be where a manager had allegations of securities fraud in his background, and he downplayed that, calling it an administrative matter. Another example, just asking about their code of ethics and compliance at the firm. They said that there had been an uptick in personal trading violations, and we know that can happen at firms, but upon further questioning, the compliance team disclosed that it was actually the founder of the firm who had done these personal trading violations, and that led to us to believe the tone at the top was not a high priority, and so we rated that manager deficient.
I would like to continue the theme of transparency. It is very important in our relationship with the manager is built on trust. And sometimes when we do discover certain things, like during the background check is part of our process, operational due diligence process at Russell, and that is run by independent company. If we discover something that, again, is concerning to us, as a part of our process, we do have a veto power where the portfolio manager is not going to proceed with the manager. If we mark the manager deficient, that means the manager is not up to par to be part of our product or to invest money for one of our clients. If they don't disclose something to you, we're definitely not happy about it. But even if they do disclose something to you, there are definitely things that we will say no to. In addition to reputational risk is a big deal. And if you are tainted, so to speak, it's really hard to erase in our industry. It's a small industry at the end of the day.
I would just say that the fund needs to continue to do operational due diligence on itself. It needs to be testing these things often, and it has to document its reports on these tests as well. If a fund is always saying that it doesn't identify any risks, that's probably suspicious. There's always room for improvement, so
it's a continuous process.
Yeah, from the lens looking at maybe crypto funds, there's obviously a lot of reputational concerns when we look at the crypto industry. A lot of them are meritless. Some of them are very true. So you have to sift between, just like doing it, you have to do background checks. You've got sometimes some very young founders, some very young CEOs that are not going to have the credentials that you're used to. Doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong or that you shouldn't partner with them, but it might make it a little bit more challenging to convince your stakeholders to do so.
I'll play off 2 points you made. I think they were really good. We have senior people in this industry. We have junior people in this industry. We have mid-career people in this industry. So how you ask a question is really important. I'll give you an example. We came in late to a due diligence. It was a merger and acquisition. Someone had cold feet. We're like, let's just bring in Tony's team real quick just to check this. It was at the end of the process. They did the due diligence already. So it turns out the lawyers were there, all the bankers were in the room, and it came up to, did you have any SEC violations? Okay. When that question was asked, the answer was no. They did not have any enforcements done on them, but they did have a letter from the SEC that they were investigating them. And we asked a question, well, do you have anything ongoing with the SEC? and you could see them all clam up. They asked a question that we now have to admit that we have this letter from the SEC and we're dealing with it right now. So it just kind of shows the skill and the difference, and that's why we pair up junior people with senior people and challenge people. When it comes to war stories, one I always like to bring is, again, bring it to the people side and trust side. Everyone who works at a fund, small or big by now, should know operational due diligence is a requirement for certain channels. Now, we used to be in a day where private managers, some of the hard to access funds would say no to ODD, take my pre-canned video, watch that and feel comfortable with it. They were in a position of power. They were able to do that. Now we have the democratization of alternatives and private assets. So there's more of a distribution need. So a lot of these players have to do the due diligence that they fought. So I just think like asking the right questions and what's their level of engagement when we reach out. Do they respond quick when we say, hey, we'd like to come on site and do diligence, or do they wait 3 days to get back to us? We tell our clients the clock starts when we sign our contract, and they tell us to go assess that manager. So we had a manager, I won't go into names, unresponsive for a few days, normal-ish. A week went by, we went to the client, we reached out several times, different emails. We get a call back, he's in his car, it's the owner of the firm. And he said he was in the war and he had a brain injury, and it took him a very long time to respond to questions in written format or verbal format. We hung up the phone, we called our client and said, this guy doesn't want to answer questions. Apparently he has a brain injury. Next thing you know, the funding never happened with it. It was just his sheer unresponsiveness and the really weird reasons of why he couldn't answer questions. Sometimes that's all you need for a client to have a red light.
It's a gut feeling as
Yeah.
well, of experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.